Hi, this is Raghee Horner, and we're going to start a new feature here at Daily Trading Edge, and that is something I'm going to call Forex on 5. So in 5 minutes we're going to cover a topic or an idea or a potential trade setup, and I'm going to walk you through the details of that in a nice, quick, yet detailed video. So today's topic, as you can see from the visual in front of you, is going to be about the IBFX PRS platform. Now, anybody who's either seen me present or caught a webinar or maybe caught me at one of the traders or Forex expos knows that I'm a huge fan of chart patterns. From my experience in reading authors and traders like Richard Schabacker and Charles Dow and people who used to trade back in the early 1900s, one of the things that I saw was they used to use price charts, which they'd actually graph by hand, and then they'd draw lines and levels and identify chart patterns on their manually drawn charts. So chart patterns are a time-tested, literally you can find writings that date back to the early 1920s. For example, you take a look at any of Charles Dow's newsletters. You take a look even more specifically at Richard Schabacker and books like Technical Analysis and Stock Market Profits. And you'll notice that these books were written, again, in the early 1920s and have actually chart patterns right in the book and explain the psychology of and how back then they used to trade them. Now, the reason I find this so interesting is that now with the advances of the internet and computers, we can take what used to be time-consuming and a task that required a certain amount of experience and or understanding of how to even draw the lines and levels and then take the next step and actually find the chart patterns on the chart. Now, with a tool like PRS, I can look across multiple time frames, multiple pairs simultaneously and have this PRS system almost like a trading partner here in my room kind of nudge me and say, hey, this is what I found, what do you think? Now, the reason I present PRS in that manner is that PRS is not a system. This is not a list of trades. It's not even a list of potential trades. These are just some setups. These are just lines and levels that have occurred on a particular time frame on a particular chart. So there has to be some understanding of a few key factors. One, is this a pattern that is a good underlying good match for the underlying market cycle, the underlying market direction? In other words, this is a channel down pattern, right? Ideally, it's been my experience that channel down patterns are best traded or best watched or best set up in a downtrending market. So when you're taking a look at a automated tool like the PRS, remember, its job is not to take over your trading decisions, but instead offer you potential ideas that you will then go ahead and look at a little bit more closely to make sure that it indeed is occurring in the right market cycle, that the pattern is a good example of the pattern. So you still need some skill, and that's why it's really important that you study and understand not only what a good pattern looks like, but understanding when this pattern should occur in terms of the market cycle, and then having ideas upon which type of entries might be best suited for the pattern itself and the underlying market cycle. Now, we had an update about a day ago that talked about this, and I think this is a good introduction. This Forex on 5 is a good introduction where I'm getting you to hopefully ask some different kind of questions. In other words, making sure you're using a tool like PRS in the way that it was intended, as a scanning, chart pattern recognition, and alert tool, not as a trading system. Okay? We talked about the initial trend, and one of the things that I want to leave you with here is that the initial trend, and I'm getting an update right now, so it disappeared. How's that for live television, right? Okay, so the initial trend has a reading of 0 basically to 10, 0 bars to 10 bars. Here's how you keep this in mind. 1 to 3 bars is a quiet sideways cycle. 4 to 5 bars is a distribution or a volatile sideways market cycle or direction. 6 bars or more is a trend. If you keep that in mind, think about the pattern. Is it a sideways market pattern or is it a trending market pattern? match that up with the initial trend, and you'll take the first step to confirming that the pattern is occurring in the right market cycle.